February the 5th, 2026. Welcome back to the Two Witnesses Live. I'm your host, Watchful, and it's time for all the things we cover here on this show. Let's see. We have general news from Fury, our Fury report. We have the Torment reports, and we're going to continue with our bruising the serpent, the head of the serpent section, as we continue to learn about Iran, considering that seems to be forefront in the news today. And then we'll finish off with a, let's see what we'll do. Maybe we'll do a timeline update. Yeah. We'll continue doing that. So let's get started with the Fury reports. So we'll start in the Middle East with Iran. Of course, Iran seizes 2 foreign oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. Iranian state television and Revolutionary Guard sources claim the vessels were smuggling fuel, approximately 6,300 barrels, which is 1 million liters, including diesel. The tankers were seized near Farsi Island and transferred to Bushehr. 15 foreign crew members detained and referred to judiciary. No nationalities or flags specified in the initial report. This occurs amid heightened regional tensions and prior Iranian threats against U.S. bases and Israel, cited as reasons for renewed negotiations. Moving on to U.S. domestic security and biolab investigations, there's an ongoing probe linked to Reedley, California clandestine biolab. Originally uncovered late 2022, early 2023, the unlicensed facility in a Fresno County warehouse was operated by Prestige Biotech and tied to Universal Meditech Incorporated, both linked to Chinese national Jia Bei Zhu, aliases for Jesse Zhu, David He, and Xing He. Recent developments: FBI, SWAT, and Las Vegas Metropolitan Police raided a residential property, Sugar Springs Drive, northeast Las Vegas area. Based on suspicious activity tips, the locked garage contained lab equipment, refrigerators, freezers, numerous vials, bottles, jugs of unknown liquids, some red-brown, and potential biohazard material. Over 1,000 evidence items seized for FBI lab analysis. Property owned by an LLC connected to Zhu. Is it ZHU? Investigations continue with ties back to the California case, raising biosecurity and national security concerns. Then on the Epstein files, related fallout, recent releases from the Jeffrey Epstein files contained more than anticipated, focusing on conspiracy theories, alleged plots against Trump, and key government figures, and unrelated mysteries over the past 20 years. This contributed to market instability, including a Bitcoin crypto crash, which, if you're heavily invested in Bitcoin, it is seriously taking a dive, down to half from its high. Let's see, some speculation ties the timing to Epstein's revelations, reopening old crypto history questions, though primary drivers appear to be AI concerns, software stock declines, example given Alphabet and Qualcomm, and general crypto slide. Then in Texas, Islam-related developments, growing Muslim population in Texas, estimated 400 to 600,000 Muslims. About 330 mosques noted as of the state's fastest growing religion. There was a school incident in Wiley ISD, which is near Dallas. A staff member placed on leave after an unapproved Why Islam table tied to Muslim student associated for World Hijab Day. Let's see, they distributed Qurans, hijabs, pamphlets, including on Sharia, and items during lunch. District apologized and reviewed policies through criticism, though criticism noted the principal posed in a hijab and gave an interview. My Lord. Yeah, it's happening, people. This is happening in our country. Political response in late January 2026, Governor Greg Abbott demanded Attorney General Paxton stripped CAIR's, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations, nonprofit status and halt its operations in Texas, citing ties to Muslim Brotherhood and concerns over radical Islam Sharia influence. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick named preventing Sharia law on his top 2027 legislative priority. Good for him. Commentary notes skepticism about timing and effectiveness with potential ballot boxes consequences for Abbott on March 3rd. Then moving on to the U.S. federal Trump administration updates. Let's see. Civil service reforms. President Trump gained authority via a new OPM rule to fire or discipline up to 50,000 federal career employees in policy influencing roles, stripping traditional protections and appeal rights. Other mentions call for a new nuclear arms treaty with Russia, post New START expiration discussions on immigration enforcement. Trump RX is now live. Matter of fact, right before the show, he was doing a live announcement on that, likely referring to his prescription or health-related initiatives. Details are unclear. Trump RX, so that's something he's been working on for the last 2 months, maybe longer, to bring the cost of prescription medication down significantly. So something that used to cost like $1,200 should now cost $20. And he accomplished that through leverage with favored nations status, to where, there were other countries who were refusing to pay higher prices. He successfully negotiated the agreements between those countries and the pharmaceutical companies, making it fair for everybody. All right, in international geopolitical news, Ukraine, Russia, prisoner swap completed. 157 Ukrainians, including some civilians, and 157 to 160 Russians returned after U.S.-led talks in Abu Dhabi. No major breakthrough on ending the war. Peace discussions continue with future meetings planned. Ukraine reportedly deactivated Russia's Starlink terminals and struck a Russian missile site. How annoying. Let's see. UK politics. Prime Minister Keir Starmer apologized to Jeffrey Epstein victims for believing Peter Mandelson's lies about their relationship and appointing him U.S. ambassador, adding pressure amid the Epstein scandal fallout. Argentina, Venezuela. Argentina requesting extradition of Nicolas Maduro from the U.S. on crimes against humanity charges. Maduro is currently being held in the U.S. on separate narco-terrorism, cocaine, conspiracy charges following his capture. And then India-U.S. initial details on trade agreement announced. Joint statement expected soon. Potential mid-March signing, including reciprocal tariffs. And then finally, the U.S. Senate bill announced to deport Elon Omar and revoke citizenship for migrant fraudsters. That would be amazing. All right, that was a lot. Thank you so much, Fury, for putting that together. And let's move on to our... Through shadows deep. All right, let's start with Donald Trump. Let's see. So pinned post. Let's see. This is not pinned post. This is about an hour ago. From Michael Dell. Dear America. We're not just watching the Super Bowl. We're changing the game for 25 million American kids. Susan and I are proud to anchor Invest America 24 Trump accounts with $6.25 billion to jumpstart investment accounts for the next generation. Wow. It's time to give every child a stake in the American dream. Claim your child's future at investamerica.org. Interesting. That's a lot of money to seed the accounts. If you have children, you might want to go to Trump accounts, sign up for a Trump account, and then also investamerica.org. Seems like there might be some money to claim out there. Excuse me. All right, what is this? Is this a promo?
Dear America.
If I start investing when I'm 16?
9, 7. It could change my future. All our future. I want to be a nurse.
Go to college.
Be a businesswoman. I can save for a house with a trampoline. 2 trampolines. This year, every American child gets an investment account.
And millions will be pre-funded.
That's free money. We can all expand the American dream. Sign me up.
Did they change the, it used to be called Trump accounts. Did they change it to Invest America? I would look at both if I were you. I think there's actually 2 websites. I think you have to start the account at Trump accounts or sign up for it. And then this Invest America seems to be a separate thing. All right. Also an hour ago from Donald Trump, American elections are rigged. What's new? American elections are rigged, stolen, and a laughingstock all over the world. We are either going to fix them or we won't have a country any longer. I am asking all Republicans to fight for the following. Save America Act. 1. All voters must show voter ID identification. 2. All voters must show proof of United States citizenship to register for voting. 3. No mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. I think that's fair. Go ahead. You have my permission. Do it. All right. Also from Donald Trump, I am hearing that the highly respected MAGA warrior Cody Simpson is considering launching his campaign. Ugh. It's an endorsement. Or skipping endorsements. The United States is the most powerful country in the world. I completely rebuilt its military in my first term, including new and many refurbished nuclear weapons. I also added Space Force and now continue to rebuild our military at levels never seen before. We're even adding battleships, which are 100 times more powerful than the ones that roamed the seas during World War II. Let's see. The Iowa, Missouri, Alabama, and others. I have stopped nuclear wars from breaking out across the world between Pakistan and India, Iran and Israel, and Russia and Ukraine, rather than extend New START, a badly negotiated deal by the United States that, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. We should have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right. Highly respected Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orbán, is a truly strong and powerful leader with a proven track record of delivering phenomenal results. He fights tirelessly and loves his great country and people, just like I do for the United States of America. Viktor works hard to protect Hungary, grow the economy, create jobs, promote trade, stop illegal immigration, and ensure law and order. Relations between Hungary and the United States have reached new heights of cooperation and spectacular achievement under my administration, thanks largely to Prime Minister Orbán. I look forward to continuing working closely with him so that both of our countries can further advance this tremendous path to success and cooperation. I was proud to endorse Viktor for re-election in 2022 and am honored to do it again. Did he just trick me into another endorsement? You slick guy. Viktor Orbán is a true friend, fighter, and winner, and has my complete and total endorsement for re-election as Prime Minister of Hungary. You know, I thought for sure this is some dude from another country. This is not going to be an endorsement, but nope. I need a way to filter out his endorsements. I've had very productive discussions with Prime Minister Keir Starmer about the island of Diego Garcia. It is the site of a major U.S. military base strategically situated in the middle of the Indian Ocean and, therefore, of great importance to the national security of the United States. We have the most powerful military in the world. Our military operations over the course of the last year were successful because of the strength of our warfighters, modern capability of our equipment, and, very importantly, the strategic location of our military bases for staging and other reasons. I understand that the deal Prime Minister Starmer has made, according to many, the best he could make. However, if the lease deal sometime in the future ever falls apart or anyone threatens or endangers U.S. operations and forces at our base, I retain the right to militarily secure and reinforce the American presence in Diego Garcia. Let it be known that I will never allow our presence on a base as important as this to ever be undermined or threatened by fake claims or environmental nonsense. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Huh. Okie dokie. What's this? I feel like I'm going to be tricked into another endorsement. Let's do it. The great country of Japan is having a very important legislative election on Sunday, February 8th, 2026. The results of this election are very important to the future of Japan. The Prime Minister, Sane Takaishi, has already proven to be a strong, powerful, and wise leader, and one that truly loves her country. I look forward to welcoming Prime Minister Takaishi to the White House on March 19th in my visit to Japan. I and all of my representatives were extremely impressed with her. In addition to national security, the United States and Japan have worked closely together on making a very substantial trade deal, one that strongly benefits both countries. Prime Minister Takaishi is someone who deserves powerful recognition for the job she and her coalition are doing, and therefore, as President of the United States of America, it is my honor to give a complete and total endorsement of her. He did. Bastard. And what her highly respected coalition is representing. She will not let the people of Japan down. Good luck on the very important Sunday vote. You are getting tricky, you son of a gun. I tell you what. If all he's going to post is endorsements, I think that's a violation of prophecy. That's not counted as prophecy. All right, California's lost money, $32 billion COVID relief payment fraud, $24 billion to unaccountable homeless relief, $18 billion high-speed rail fraud, zero track laid, $2.5 billion on food stamp fraud, and $650 million on the 911 system that never worked. They are full of fraud. And then let's see, from Brandon Straka from the Walkaway Movement, corruption exposed. LA County has 30 times more taxpayer-funded hospices than Florida, despite having 300,000 fewer seniors. Yeah.
In Minnesota, they thought they would be spending $3 million on children with autism.
Yes.
And they were going to invest this $3 million to give the kids who are there, and not every child has autism, but, what enough do that there was going to be a need to pay families to help these kids get through their days and manage their issues. Fine. The budget now is $400 million. So forget about the fact that it's more than 130 times more money. Who's going to take care of the kids if all the kids are diagnosed with autism? Yeah. Why does every child have autism? Because they started paying moms to lie that their children had autism because they could get paid money. And the kids who don't need services now are forced to take care of services because we're paying the service providers to take care of kids who don't have a problem. So you understand that it's a perverse process where if you don't do it, they think you're dumb. I'm paying the moms, I'm paying the providers, the kids, God bless them, have no idea this is happening. And you're just ripping money out of the system, but also diluting care for the kids who need it. This is what political patronage and dishonesty in these precious programs does. And again, the money is not the primary problem. It's hurting the people who are most vulnerable. Hubert Humphrey, whose name is on this building that I'm in right now in Washington.
Well, and I'd really like to know who's getting that money, because that is a lot of money. And what are they doing with it?
He said something beautiful. And he's a Democrat, by the way. He said, it is the moral obligation of government to take care of those at the dawn of their life, which are our children. We cover 53% of kids in America. Most children are covered by Medicaid, by our insurance or CHIP. We have to take care of those at the twilight of life. Those are our seniors. Every great society takes care of its seniors. We're great people. We're going to do that. You've worked your whole life. You've contributed. We respect you for that. We would help you. So those are the dawn of life. Those are the twilight of life. And those living in the shadows, the kids and the adults, and also people in the shadows. We've got to take care of these people. Our fellow man needs our help. Cowardly acts, running from the challenges of dealing with corruption, of powerful forces who can influence what's going on in your life, who are uncomfortable to fight against. Nobody wants to fight the Russian mob in LA, but someone's got to do it. I mean, my goodness, they elected you. Go do your job.
Why does LA and California have such a hard time getting quality leaders that actually care about the people? Why is that? This looks different, maybe.
In Minnesota, they thought they would be spending $3 million on children with autism.
Yes.
And they were going to invest this.
Nope, same thing. Just posted multiple times, apparently. All right, from Trump 13 hours ago. Oh, no, from Bill Mitchell. Trump's economy just blew the doors off. GDP hit a blistering 5.3 annualized growth in quarter 4, 2025. Experts straight up bewildered. This beats China's Q4 around 4.5%. America's roaring back under Trump while others lag. The Post asks if we firmly support it. Huge yes from the base. Thumbs up if you're feeling the boom. This is what winning looks like. Explosive growth, jobs flowing, inflation tamed. Trump's policies delivering big league for everyday Americans. I follow back all verified MAGA accounts who are chat or retweet this post. Repost this. Huh. Oh, what's this?
My God, we just got a report from the Fed Atlanta bank that says we grew at 5.3% in the fourth quarter. This is an absolutely booming economy right now.
Yay. All right, from Eric Doherty, breaking Secretary Scott Bessent just stunned the experts by confirming up 4.1% U.S. economy growth, while Europe recorded only 0.3%, and it's only going to accelerate from here. Bessent and Trump were right. The U.S. will have reported likely, despite the longest government shutdown in history, 4.1% growth for the past 3 quarters. And so we have been successful at that. Europe last week celebrated 0.3% growth. So it's no comparison, and I think we are beginning to accelerate. Importantly, everything we are doing is to fix the terrible Biden inflation from the past 4 years. 21.5%, much more for working families, and we are bringing that down.
The U.S. will have reported likely, despite the government shutdown, despite the longest government shutdown in history, 4.1% growth for the past 3 quarters. And so we have been successful at that.
Yeah, I just read all that. There's no reason to listen to it again. Senator from Elections Wizard, Senator Tuberville, we gotta get rid of these voting machines. There's a half dozen people here in the House and Senate that did not get elected. It was all bogus. We've seen the evidence. Oh, is that what these guys say?
And then, of course, President Trump wants same-day voting, mail ballots, get rid of these voting machines. There's a half a dozen people, whether it's the House or Senate, Larry, that are up here as we speak, that did not get elected. It was all bogus because we've seen the evidence, and if we don't straighten that out, you're going to see a lot more of it this fall, and it's just going to get worse and worse with the American people saying, listen, we got all y'all up there, and you don't do anything to straighten it out. We want closed borders, and we want fair elections. Those 2 things they are demanding, and as Republicans, we had better to listen to them and do that, or we're going to lose next fall.
A lot of states, you know, don't even have an ID picture. And by the way, I vote in the state of Connecticut. You don't need an ID. You don't need a picture. You could show them a credit card, Senator. Anybody can get a credit card, any kind of credit card. You could show them a debit card, and that's sufficient. Many states allow driver's licenses. Well, anybody can get a driver's license. Some states are allowing illegals to get driver's licenses for commercial purposes. So the SAVE Act would eliminate that stuff. It's very important, but you got to make the case.
A lot of illegals driving trucks, if you didn't know. So from Mike Lee, reposted by Trunk, my colleague, Senator Ashley Moody nails it with this message. Return to Senate tradition, require filibustering senators to gasp, actually speak, using existing Senate rules. Pass the SAVE Act.
The gentleman will raise his right hand. You solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter. So help you God. So help you God.
I do. I know Jefferson Smith, and I will personally vouch for him.
There's been a big mistake.
Why don't you tell the people the truth for a change?
You're not a senator. You're an honorary stooge.
This country is bigger than the Taylors, or you, or me, or anything else. Great principles don't get lost once they come to light. They're right here. You just have to see them. Somebody will listen to me.
I don't think I've seen that. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Looks good. It looks emotional. Senator Ashley, return to tradition, forced debate on the most pressing issue facing this country, pass the SAVE Act. I'm all in. Cool. All right. I spoke with Savannah Guthrie and let her know that I am directing all federal law enforcement to be at the families and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. We are deploying all resources to get her mother home safely. The prayers of our nation are with her and her family. God bless and protect Nancy. President Donald J. Trump. Here's an endorsement. That feels like an endorsement. Yeah, that's an endorsement. Another endorsement. Oh, you know what? These are from yesterday anyway. There were just a bunch of endorsements. All right. We got a few minutes left on Trump's time. I wanted to play his a little bit of Patty White's speech about Donald Trump and then a little bit of him because he was just knocking him out of the park comedy-wise. Let's listen to this.
Something the president reminded us of last year when he publicly gave God praise for the miracle of his life and God's sovereign plan. This morning, we gather not only to pray, but to give thanks. We give thanks for a president who understands that faith is not a private afterthought, but a public good. A president who has not merely spoken about faith, but has acted to protect it, defend it, and to elevate it to the highest level possible. I stand before you today with a very unique perspective. I've known this president for more than 25 years. I've had a front row seat, not just to the public moments the world sees, but to the private ones that most will never see. And it is there, away from the cameras and the crowds, that character is truly revealed. I've seen his compassion when no one was looking. I've witnessed his generosity when there was nothing to gain. I've watched him step in to help the forgotten, the overlooked, the vulnerable, not because it was politically expedient, but because it was the right thing to do. And more than 20 years ago, I was in his office in Trump Tower, and a well-known minister and my friend were with me. As the conversation was happening, the president turned, not to the famous voice in the room, but to my friend, and simply asked her what she did. She said, "Sir, I serve on the streets, the broken, the homeless, those struggling with addiction, and women trapped in prostitution." Without any hesitation, he called for his executive assistant to bring his checkbook, and he said, "Now that is real ministry." And he gave, not for recognition or for credit, no one outside of that room ever knew.
Tell now.
But he continued to support that work quietly, faithfully, and privately for a very long time. Scripture commands us to care for the widow and the orphan, to defend the poor, and to love mercy. I've seen this president live that out quietly, time and time again, through actions, not just words. And as senior advisor to the president of the White House Faith Office, and my White House director, Jenny Korn, is up here, I can say without hesitation that no president in modern history, or perhaps all of history, has done more structurally, substantively, and sincerely to elevate and protect religious liberty. For the first time in our nation's history, faith has been institutionally elevated through the creation of the historic White House Faith Office, our one-year anniversary. Not a symbolism, but a substance. Housed in the West Wing, it ensures that people of faith are essential partners in serving the vulnerable.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit there. You know, something I'm realizing as we study Islam and look at, you know, who the enemy is in the book of Revelation. I mean, a lot of enemies have been exposed, but it's the God of death. It's the murderer from the beginning. That's the true enemy, the destroyer. You know, in John 10:10, it says, "The thief cometh not but for to steal, to kill, and destroy." And Jesus said, "I am come that they might have life and have it more abundantly." You know, we take issue with, you know, different Christians and their beliefs. You know, there's a lot of people who don't like Paula White. I don't really know a whole lot about her. I've taken people's word for it that, you know, she seems like she's like a mega church type of pastor or minister. And as we study Islam, it really starts to highlight what Jesus said about the 7 churches. All 7 of those churches look to and love the Son of God. They surround the Son of God. That's the thing they all have in common. Sure, some of them have... Oops, time's up. Some of them... I'm sorry, I love that boo. Some of the churches have issues. They do. They have problems. And that, you know, whatever church that you were raised with, whatever denomination you believe is correct, you know, or whatever denomination you believe is incorrect, if the people in there are looking at Yeshua, you know, all it takes, you know, Yeshua was lifted up on the cross like the serpent was lifted up on the pole, so that the children of Israel, by just looking at that serpent on the pole, would be saved from the viper bites. We all follow the same Son of God. You know, we have a lot of us have different opinions. A lot of us have different problems. We all got problems, but we're all in the same boat together. And we shouldn't be looking at any one of our fellow brothers and sisters as less than ourselves. That's the lesson we learn from Smyrna and Philadelphia. We love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. You know, we can be loving when looking at somebody to label them according to their sin. Just remember you have sins of your own, and would they be rightfully to label you and your sins accordingly? Yeah, so we should just love one another as we love ourselves. And I'm so blessed at the way things are going right now with, you know, what a great intro from Paula White about President Trump. And this is my experience. I can confirm this as a witness. Growing up, I've admired Donald Trump because I have seen him genuinely help people for not for the recognition. And for her to tell of a story of something that happened in a room like that, I 100% believe her, because it seems to be his type of behavior. And it's funny because he makes fun of it here in his speech. I want to listen to a little bit of his speech just because it's pretty funny. He makes fun of himself, and he deprecates himself to elevate others. It's such a good example. It really is a good witness for how to be somebody in power, somebody who's rich. I mean, he's literally the most powerful man in the world right now, and he's making fun of himself, and he's giving glory. He's especially when he talks about heaven, like he's like, I don't know if I'm going to get in heaven. I need all the help I can get. It's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to Pastor Paula. Paula's an incredible woman. She's been with me a long time, right from the beginning. This is a beautiful American tradition, and it's a true honor to be back with so many incredible leaders and people of faith at the National Prayer Breakfast. I think I've been here just about every time. It's hard to turn it down. I don't have the courage to turn it down. Sometimes I want to. Come back from a horrendous trip fighting people that can't stand us, keeping us out of wars, and seeing things that nobody would believe that anybody would see. And last time I came, I got in at 4 a.m. They said, "Sir, you're going to be speaking at 7." I said, "Really? Oh, that's wonderful." I said, "Where?" "National Prayer Breakfast." I said, "I'll be there. I'm afraid not to be. I need all the help I can get."
See?
And I never get a fair break from the fake news, which is back there. That's a lot of fake news. Because last time I was having a lot of fun. We had a big crowd. We had 60,000 people, and I'm talking about the fact that I will never make it to heaven. I will never, ever. And I was being funny. I was trying to be, you can't be sarcastic with them because they write your words, and they don't. The people who are reading the words are much different. But I say, I'm never going to make it to heaven. I just don't think I qualify. I don't think there's a thing I can do, but all of these good things I'm doing, including for religion. Religion's back now hotter than ever before. I mean, I have to tell you. But I said, even though I did that and so many other things, I named things, I said, I won't qualify. I'm not going to make it to heaven. And the New York Times did a front page story that Donald Trump is questioning his life and the meaning of his life. No, I was just having fun. I really think I probably should make it. I mean, I'm not a perfect candidate, but I did a hell of a lot of good for perfect people. That's for sure. Right, Mr. Speaker? But I want to thank the dozens of members of Congress here this morning. And
all right, it's really good, even for the next 10 minutes. It's just comedy gold. It's worth listening to. But we got to move on. We're over time, and we got to move on to Elon Musk. Let's move on to his timeline here. All right, give it a refresh. Building an interstellar civilization. All right, Elon Musk on politics. I did get the filter, installed, so we should not see anything on Grok, Starlink, Full Self-Driving, any of his companies, except for some oddball ones like this one.
But politics generally is very tribal. And it's very tribal, and people lose their objectivity usually with politics. Like they generally have trouble seeing the good on the other side or the bad on their own side. That's generally how it goes. That I guess was one of the things that surprised me the most is you often simply cannot reason with people. If they're in one tribe or the other. They simply believe that everything their tribe does is good and anything the other political tribe does is bad. And persuading them otherwise is almost impossible. So
it's a very valid point. People get infatuated with their ideas and their beliefs to where they're literally blind. And it's so hard to reach somebody when they're in that state, when they're in that. And I can imagine that it's many times worse in politics. Because, you know, their life may be on the line, or even their livelihood.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for holding this, and congratulations to the team that put the report together. It really confirms all of our worst suspicions about what was happening with Europe and the influence that they were having on U.S. speech. I wanted to ask specifically if you've considered help to Wyoming and New Hampshire with this Granite Act. This is the framework that would strip sovereign immunity from foreign governments for censorship-related activities. It would also prohibit the U.S. from enforcing any such orders and enable private lawsuits against foreign entities that are engaging in censorship. It sounded as though U.S. Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, Sarah Rogers, said that was in the works.
Will your government then take legal action against Ofcom if they try and overreach in the way you've described?
Well, there's already formal action proposed. There is a bill before the House called the Granite Act that would amend an existing statute to clarify that as a matter of American public policy, any penalties imposed by Ofcom are unenforceable against American companies. So our legislature will likely consider that, and we'll certainly consider other options if indeed the British government insists upon trying to nullify the First Amendment on American soil with respect to American companies.
And Congressman Darrell Issa appears to have mentioned it during your recent hearings.
If we begin a process of sanctioning whatever it takes, even against our best friends in Europe, in order to say you cannot be prosecuted in another country, to enforce the First Amendment.
Can you describe what the thinking is and whether you and your colleagues are interested in moving forward with something like that? And if not, then what specific legislative and other measures you can take to protect Americans and our right to free speech?
We're definitely looking at that. And I should have said this at the front end. Michael, thank you for all the work you've done. You've been tremendous in exposing what's going on. We appreciate that. And all of you on the call for covering this issue. But yeah, because there's always, what is the remedy for the harm? You want something like that. Now, in the broad sense, and I mentioned this earlier, it's the White House and the Trump administration can use this as part of what they negotiate when it comes to trade talks. And people want to trade with the United States in our huge market, of course. We all understand that. So that's one of them. But there's also the specific remedy if you were harmed or they're doing all the terms that it's shadow banning someone's content. Michael, you have firsthand experience in some of this area. What's the remedy? So we are definitely looking at that. We had bills we passed before, but the specific remedy you're talking about, we're taking a good look at that and seeing if there's something we can do.
The last question will be from Benedict Smith from The Telegraph. He said his mic's not working, but I'm going to read out his question, which states, the report's conclusion talks about legislative solutions to counter attacks on free speech. Could you support visa bans on the British government officials over incidences like the treatment of Graham Linehan? And what other levers can you pull here?
You want to come to the United States, you want to hang out in the United States, you want to vacation in the United States, then the State Department would say, sorry, you've been involved in censoring speech in American speech and involved in censorship. We're not granting the visa. So that is one of the ways you can apply the pressure. We're looking at every possible route, negotiations when it comes to trade talks, visas. Is there other remedies like Michael talked about? We're looking at all that.
Good. Yeah, they're going to try and enforce their censorship on us. We need to push back. Can't let them get away with that. Ooh. So Guinness with John and Dworkesh. Oh, this is what I'm going to listen to after the show today. I love his interviews. You always learn so much when you listen to his interviews. Not Elon, anything Elon's in.
So are there really 3 hours of questions? Or has it? Are you fucking serious?
Yeah. You don't even allowed to talk about Elon?
Holy fuck, man.
I need more beer.
I mean, it's the most interesting point. All the storylines are kind of converging right now. So we'll see how much.
Almost like I planned it.
Exactly. Well, we'll get to
that. I would never do such a thing.
So, as you know better than anybody else, the total cost of ownership of a data center, only 10 to 15% is energy. And that's the part you're presumably
All right, I don't want to hear about that. We're gonna move on. I'm gonna listen to that later and highlight some parts if there's anything worth highlighting. I'm sure there is. See, it turns out interfering with elections is standard fare for the European Commission ahead of at least 8 elections across 6 European countries since 2023. The Commission met with platforms to pressure them to censor political speech in the days before the vote. No surprise there. Let's see. Tesla owners. China now generates 33.2% of the world's electricity, over 2 times the U.S. That is 1/3 of the global capacity alone. Zoinks. Wow. China is generating 40% more electricity than the U.S. and EU combined. Yeah, but they also have more people. New York City would be a net exporter of electricity if you covered roofs and parking lots. Fair enough. Whoever said money can't buy happiness really knew what they were talking about. All right, here's a clip. Let's see if this is any good.
So you realize it's a bottleneck, and you go to your engineers and like, what is the next? Like, what do you tell them to do? I want 1 million wafers a month in 2030.
We
what is the next?
Yesterday.
Like, what do you?
That's right.
Did he not post a lot today, or am I over filtering? I might be over filtering. These are all from yesterday. Yeah. Huh. Weird. Now let me go turn that filter off. Hang on a minute. Unblock maybe? Maybe that's all he posted today. Was just stuff about Starlink. Women live longer because of matriarchal systemic sexism. I'm a biology denialist. Okay. That's the data center one. Nope. Musk on politics. We listened to that one 7 hours ago. Maybe because he did this interview. I don't know when he did that. Maybe he just didn't post a lot today. Well, I'll be. New York City would be a net exporter. Yeah. Wow. That's the shortest day of posts Elon's ever had. I wonder what else he was up to today. Interesting. Well, it still counts. He's still posting. And we've got a big old interview to watch. I don't know when he did that. We'll have to see what else he got up to today. But there you go. All right, well, fastest Elon coverage ever. Actually keeps us under the hour. Let us move on to our next segment here. Let's see. What is it called? It's the bruising the head of the serpent. Hey, where'd my background go?
I come in my own name. A shadow falls, a world aflame. I rise, I rule, I stake my claim. A serpent's coil, a deadly.
Well, apparently my video for bruising the head of the serpent disappeared. So let's just move on to this here. There we go. We're going to listen to Raymond Ibrahim give an update on the entire Islamic history in once. So let's. I think he does a pretty good job of this, and it's worth listening to since we are learning about Islam. There we go.
These violent midwives of Europe are almost always now today known as Arabs, Saracens, Moors, Turks, Ottomans, Tatars. They're always given a national name. But the reality is, if you dig into the sources, they saw themselves first and foremost as Muslims. And what they were doing was fulfilling the Islamic mandate via jihad. That's what comes out in their sources. But like I said, if you look into it, every time the rationale of these various groups, whoever they may be, is the ISIS rationale, the Islamic State rationale, the one that you've been told has nothing to do with Islam.
A historical perspective from the great historian, Mr. Raymond Ibrahim. The way he explains the history of Islamism, of Muslim, and the way we relate to it today.
Here's now another good quote from Bernard Lewis, well-known historian, deceased now, of course. He writes, quote, "We tend nowadays to forget that for approximately 1,000 years from the advent of Islam in the 7th century until the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683, which I just mentioned, Christian Europe was under constant threat from Islam, the double threat of conquest and conversion. Most of the new domains were wrested from Christendom. Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and North Africa were all Christian countries, no less, indeed, rather more, than Europe. All this left a deep sense of loss and a deep terror." Okay.
I want to go back and repeat that because it's highlighting how Islam is taking over.
In the 7th century until the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683, which I just mentioned, Christian Europe was under constant threat from Islam, the double threat of conquest and conversion. Most of the new domains were wrested from Christendom. Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and North Africa were all Christian countries, no less, indeed, rather more, than Europe. All this left a deep sense of loss and a deep terror. Okay, very accurate. It's very hard nowadays to come across such frankness in historical books that deal with this topic, except mine, of course. It's also worth mentioning that in the modern histories that people write, and I might try to get into the sort of semantic games that historians play to sort of whitewash all this, but these violent midwives of Europe are almost always now today known as Arabs, Saracens, Moors, Turks, Ottomans, Tatars. They're always given a national name, okay? But the reality is, if you dig into the sources, they saw themselves first and foremost as Muslims, and what they were doing was fulfilling the Islamic mandate via jihad. That's what comes out in their sources. So in other words, this wasn't just one of the games that historians try to play. Is like, okay, it's one national group attacking another, Turks attacking Greeks, okay, no big deal. But like I said, if you look into it, every time the rationale of these various groups, whoever they may be, is the ISIS rationale, the Islamic State rationale, the one that you've been told has nothing to do with Islam. That was the rationale for 14 centuries worth of jihad that completely terrorized much of the world, especially the Christian world. So one of the topics, for example, is slavery. I mentioned this, I think, to someone the other day, but here in America or in the West, you mentioned the word slavery. It means whites enslaving blacks. That's it. And it's kind of like amazing because the reality is, yeah, that did happen. And this is one of the problems. It's not that these historians or the fake histories that I'm discussing are lying. They always present things in a vacuum without telling you. So of course, in reality, everyone enslaved everyone. And Muslims especially enslaved a lot of Europeans. Based on a tally I did a while back, 14 million Europeans were enslaved by Muslims from as far as Iceland, from Iceland to Russia, okay? And this is mostly from the very beginning, from those centuries that I was mentioning in the 7th and 8th, but especially in the 15th and 16th century. In the 17th century, you may have heard of the Barbary pirates in North Africa. They subsisted entirely on enslaving Europeans. And I think in just a few decades in the 16th century, there was as many as 1.25 million European slaves in the markets of Algiers. But we don't hear about that, do we? So speaking of Barbary and trying to really to cap off this whole long epic jihad that went on century after century, few people know that no one was spared, not even America. America's very first war as a nation after independence was with Muslims who were acting on the very same impetus that I'm describing to you right now. And I'm talking, of course, of the Barbary Wars. And so basically what happened is these North African Muslim vessels started attacking American vessels in the Atlantic and enslaving their soldiers and really mistreating them. You can see it in the sources. And what's interesting is Thomas Jefferson and I think John Adams met with one of the ambassadors from Barbary. And Jefferson then wrote a letter back to Congress. They met the ambassador to try to parlay and get the American sailors back. So Jefferson wrote the following in a letter from 1786 to Congress, quote, "We took the liberty to make some inquiries concerning the grounds of the Barbary pirates, pretensions to make war upon nations who had done them no injury, such as America, and observed that we, Americans, considered all mankind as our friends who had done us no wrong, nor had given us any provocation. The ambassador from Barbary answered us that it was founded on the laws of their prophet, that it was written in their Quran, that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take.
And herein is the problem. We'll go back on that one.
It was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found.
Yeah. The right and duty to make war on them wherever they are found.
And to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. You can only imagine what this enlightened thinker was thinking when he was told all this. But as you can see, I give you that quote because that is the rationale and the logic that Muslims had used in all those centuries before that I was discussing. From the 7th century, here we come up until 1800, 19th century. And it's the same logic. And it's the logic that we've been forever told has nothing to do with Islam and is just a representation of a handful of radicals, Al-Qaeda, ISIS.
So this is Raymond Ibrahim. He's an expert on Islam. He's written several books, and he's given a history of Islam right now.
Et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, this was so well known. What I'm describing right now, which, again, maybe not so much to you, but to most people in this country, is just bizarre and they've never heard of it. This was so well known up until recently. So consider this quote from none other than Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, who was no mean historian himself. In his book, his 1916 book, Fear God and Take Your Part, he wrote the following: Christianity was saved in Europe solely because the peoples of Europe fought. If the peoples of Europe in the 7th and 8th centuries, and on up to and including the 17th century, had not possessed a military equality with, and gradually a growing superiority over the Mohammedans who invaded Europe, Europe would at this moment be Mohammedan, and the Christian religion would be exterminated. Wherever the Mohammedans have had complete sway, wherever the Christians have been unable to resist them by the sword, Christianity has ultimately disappeared. From the
I was thinking about that sword part today in Revelation 13. Now that we're looking at Islam, this is making a lot more sense. Where is it? It's in Revelation 13. Oh, no, that's 12. Beast from the sea. Here you go. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and faith of the saints. I almost wonder if this isn't also kind of pointing at Islam, because their national symbol is two swords crossed. Just reminded me when he mentioned that comment about the sword.
Hammer of Charles Martel to the sword of Sobieski, Christianity owed its safety in Europe to the fact that it was able to show that it could and would fight as well as the Mohammedan aggressor. That's an American president that said that. Sorry, if you can imagine that. So let's fast forward to our dismal times and discuss a little bit of what I like to call fake history. You're all familiar with fake news, of course. Fake history, in my opinion, is much more dangerous because fake news is ephemeral. It does its mischief and then it's gone. Fake history props up and creates false paradigms of the past through which people sift modern day events through. And so it essentially poisons much of everything. Perfect example is the idea that the only people who ever enslaved anyone are white people, which a lot of people believe. I was watching one Rutgers professor, her name is Brittany Cooper, black woman. And that's basically what she said. She basically made it sound that the only ones who have ever enslaved anyone were white people. Everyone else got along historically when they landed on each other's shores, okay? And then she culminates it with, I guess just, white people are so committed to being villains, okay? And that's literally her words. Now you can understand why she thinks that, because she's following a fake history. So that's the danger of all these fake histories. But in the fake history, of the current topic, I'll give you one perfect quote from a professor. I don't know if you've ever heard of John Esposito. And he's a professor at Georgetown University. And he was actually there when I was there at the time. And he was a don. Whatever he said about Islam, he was the go-to guy. He's the author of more than 35 books. He was the editor-in-chief of numerous Oxford reference works, including Oxford Encyclopedia of the Modern Islamic World and the Oxford History of Islam. He was an advisor on many movies about Islam and documentaries. And perhaps most notably, he was the go-to expert, like I said, on Islam. He was constantly called on to brief the State Department, FBI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, et cetera, et cetera. This is from his bio, by the way. So he writes, now keep in mind what I've told you about the history, the constant nonstop bombardment that began in the 7th century. He writes, 5 centuries of peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Christians elapsed before political events and an imperial papal power play led to centuries-long series of so-called holy wars that pitted Christendom against Islam and left an enduring legacy of misunderstanding and distrust. That's from his book, Islam, the Straight Path. What he's saying is that before the First Crusade, which was called for in 1095, from the birth of Islam, it's not even 5 centuries, but it's about 473 years from Muhammad's time until the First Crusade, those 5 centuries roughly were defined by peaceful coexistence. When 3/4 of Christendom was conquered and swallowed up, that was the peaceful coexistence times that got ruined by the First Crusade. These are the sorts of lies that are just being peddled. And like I gave you a little bit of his credentials and how sought after this guy is. And this is the stuff that he writes and that people read and that people believe. Which brings us to the Crusades, of course, which ironically to me, as important as they were really a drop in the bucket of the totality of warfare between Christians and Muslims. But they're the ones that you heard of because they make Christians look bad. Because in the Crusades, you have Christians moving from their homeland into what's perceived as Muslim territory. So they're the aggressors, so we can talk about that. But if you look at all the wars, I describe them a lot in my book, Sword and Scimitar. Again, that's just a drop in the bucket because most of the attacks and the assaults were from the Muslims on Christian lands. And even the Crusades were actually part of just war. Recall that all those territories I told you about, including the Holy Land, Jerusalem, and Egypt, were Christian before Muslims took it. The first Crusaders were aware of this. So when they were going there, in their mind, they were liberating ancient Christian territories and bringing them back under Christian rule, which again fits into just war theory.
The history of Islam and its relations with Christians and of course the Jewish people. Throughout history, there's been many shifts of the plates of history that, of course, during the Inquisition, during the Crusaders, where Christianity was the dominant religion, and both Islam and Judaism were paying the price for that. There were times that the Jews and the Muslims had fear of the same enemy, which was at that time the Crusaders, the Inquisitioners. And then the plates of history totally shifted itself. Mm-hmm. The Judeo-Christian alliance has arisen. As Christianity went through its own transformation and was able to rebrand itself and realize that killing Jews is ungodly, that killing Jews is pure hatred, baseless hatred. And although that has gone on for 2,000 years, but it came to a screeching halt, a screeching end. When Christianity has been able to move from the first century, to move from 2,000 years ago, all the ways to where we are today. Christianity and Judaism are together trying to survive against the onslaught of the Muslims. And if we talk about numbers, the Jewish people, we are just 15 million. That's it, 15 million in population in the world. We are just about where we were prior to the Holocaust. when we lost 6 million. Imagine, from 15 million, we lost 6 million. Versus 2 billion Muslims, 2 billion Christians, 15 million Jews. We are the smallest of all religions. And yet this has been foretold to us in the Bible. When God gave the 10 Commandments to the Israelites, and he introduced them to Judaism. And God said very clear that you will always be the smallest amongst them. However, if you follow my direction, and if you join in the partnership to be my ambassador, to be God's ambassadors to the world, to be a light unto the nations, to teach the world these laws, these codes, these ethics that we teach in the Torah, teach it to the world, transform the world, create this world to be a dwelling place for spirituality. And that is and was the journey of Judaism. It was all about the fundamentals. The founding fathers of Judaism was built on kindness. The very first Jew, known as Abraham, and his wife Sarah, they built their religion based on kindness, on compassion, on benefiting the other person, regardless of race, color, or religion.
Which yesterday, Raymond Ibrahim, we heard him say, oh no, it wasn't him, it was the other pastor from the Bent Church, that if you want to reach a Muslim, tell him that God loves him, because their religion teaches that God hates everyone.
That is the foundation of Judaism. As we read in the Bible that Sarah and Abraham together, the very first act as religious people, they pitched a tent in a scorching hot desert and welcomed travelers from all four corners of the earth to come in. They had 4 openings to their tent so that everyone could come from the north, from the south, from the east, and the west. And they would feed them, give them shelter, give them provisions. And when they would thank them, they'd say, don't thank me, thank God. I said, God? They never heard of God. There's never ever mention of a God in heaven. They were all idol worshippers. Mm-hmm. And Abraham and Sarah will introduce them to the God, the omnipotent, the omnipresent, the God who created. There's only one God in the world.
Yep.
One God that we believe in. That's where monotheism was introduced. And that is the bedrock of Judaism. It's kindness. It's benevolence. It's compassion, sensitivity, and doing everything you can to save another person's life. Judaism values life more than anything else. It's obsessed with the life and the living. This is why, till this very day, Israel is on the forefront in the medical world, because it understands the value of not only saving a person's life, but giving God's children comfort and health. This is why we are at the forefront in all areas.
All right, we're going to stop there because he just goes into channel stuff next. And then we're going to pick up here from Douglas Murray. Iran is playing a dangerous game. So this brings us into current events and what's going on with Iran.
You can say about Donald Trump is that he does tend to do what he says he's going to do. Now, he said that if the regime continued with the massacres, the public executions and much more, the Iranian revolutionary government would feel the might of the American military. And we'll see in the coming days whether he actually follows through on his threat. It seems that the regime is continuing the massacres. They're doing so with, of course, the added benefit that tyrants always have, which is that they can turn off the internet, turn off the electricity, and try to make sure that the world cannot see what they're doing to the Iranian people.
What's happening now in Iran, is it an uprising? Is it a revolution? Is it a counter-revolution? Let's listen to Mr. Douglas Murray as he lays it out in words that we can appreciate and understand of what's happening in real time.
Now, let's talk about Iran. There is an uprising against the Islamist regime. There has been for weeks. They've ruled the country since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Thousands have been slaughtered in this latest uprising. You wrote in the New York Post that for decades, the regime in Iran has acted with near impunity, not just at home, but also abroad, where they are the chief sponsors of terror. But the response from the international community for too long, Douglas, has been weak and confused. Do you see that changing under the Trump administration?
Well, it's very interesting. First of all, to segue from what we were just talking about, Rita, I don't need to tell you. I mean, one of the extraordinary things about this is that apparently tens of thousands, it seems, of Iranian protesters, including students, have been massacred by the revolutionary Islamic government in Iran. And all the celebrity airheads, of course, pretty much have just nothing to say about it. And I think there's a reason for that, which is that it's not involving America, the West, or Jews. And if any of those groups were involved, of course, then we would hear a lot more outcry. It seems a lot of people are rather confused by the idea that someone like the Ayatollah Khomeini and his terrorist government do things under their own steam, have their own views, and act on their disgusting ideology, including by massacring the Iranian people. I think this confuses a lot of people, particularly in America, in the celebrity class. They're presumably also confused because they want to do whatever Donald Trump doesn't. They want to do whatever he doesn't do and don't do whatever he does do. I actually think, as I said in the New York Post piece, I think that one of the things you can say about Donald Trump in general is that he does tend to do what he says he's going to do. Now, he said that if the regime continued with the massacres, the public executions, and much more, the Iranian revolutionary government would feel the might of the American military, certainly American air power. And he has, of course, moved a fleet of American war vessels to the region. And we'll see in the coming days whether he actually follows through on his threat. It seems that the regime is continuing the massacres. They're doing so with, of course, the added benefit that tyrants always have, which is that they can turn off the internet, turn off the electricity, and try to make sure that the world cannot see what they're doing to the Iranian people. I hope that doesn't work. I hope that that trick of dictators around the world doesn't succeed on this occasion.
I imagine it's also to hide what it is that they're doing in Iran, because if we are at this point in time for when they say peace and safety, so, you know, Trump is moving our military into position. He's working on negotiations with other countries to make sure he's got backing and support. I imagine Iran is doing the same thing with Russia and China. It wouldn't surprise me if turning off the internet and the mass killings aren't a distraction from moving their military around in preparation for some kind of a conflict. And everybody can see it's about to get much worse. We're right on the precipice, and this lines up precisely with the opening of seal number 5 in the scripture. Let's go ahead and read that. Seal number 5 is in Revelation 6. Right here. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren would be killed as they were was completed. So this here is the key. That's what tells us that that this is not a peaceful time. So you've got under the altar, you've got those who were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Well, this is seal number 5. So then immediately after seal number 5 is completed and seal number 6 opens up, you get the wrath of the Lamb, which this seems to be when he returns. Now, if we come over here to Matthew 24 and we go down to, where is it? Right here. This seems to line up here with seal number 5 and seal number 6. So seal number 5 seems to line up with the Great Tribulation. For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. Everyone is starting to recognize the prophetic fulfillment of the conflict. Today, as I was scrolling through YouTube, and a lot of the prophecy watchers are like, wait a minute, this conflict involving Turkey and Iran and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Islam, this is what was prophesied about. Well, do you think it's any coincidence that it lines up with seal number 5? Why do I say that? That's because we've gone through this period of time, and we've been tracking this since 2017. In 2017, there was an anchor point so rare that it never happens. And we've looked at all the instances of this. It never happens. This is the sign written about in Revelation 12. A woman clothed with the sun. The sun's in the constellation. She's clothed with the sun. The moon is under her feet and pain to be delivered with a crown of 12 stars. She's got 12 stars above her head. Normally she only has 9. These elements here are unique to this day and this day only. And there's an additional element to this was the festival of trumpets. This was 2 days after the beginning of the new year, the Hebrew New Year, Tishri 1. Tishri 1 was 9/21/2017. That is the beginning of the new year. 2 days after that is the festival of trumpets, Ram Teruah. So this day is uniquely rare. There's nothing like it. Even the ones that come close, and there's one that comes the closest in 439 AD. It's not on the Festival of Trumpets, which elevates this one in rarity, even above that one that's kind of close. So what does this tell us? This is an anchor point telling us the book of Revelation is written to our day and age because this sign happened while you and I were alive. What more can we learn from that? Well, there's a lot of events written in the book of Revelation to tell us to pay attention to. Didn't Jesus tell us? Here, let's go read it in Matthew 24 when his disciples asked him. Where is it? Did I pass it? Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you, obviously, because this was 2,000 years ago. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All of these things, people argue all of these things have happened for the last 2,000 years. Right, they have. But you know what? They have also happened since 2017, since that sign in Revelation 12. All of these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. There's been a lot of death on the planet since 2017, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. There's been a lot of division between those on the left and the right. Those on the right are traditionally Christians. And then many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. That happened a lot during COVID. I've never had conflicts with people like I had during COVID, during the pandemic. Then many false prophets will rise and deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, lawlessness will abound, The love of many will grow cold, but he who endures till the end shall be saved, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations. Then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is in the housetop not go down to take anything out of the house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, and pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. What I just read to you does line up with seals 1 through 4. So seal number 1 was the COVID pandemic. Seal number 2 was Biden winning the electoral college and also getting control over the vaccine, and they used it like a weapon. Taking peace from the earth. We're in the position we are in the world today because of him, largely. The Union of the United States and the United Kingdom in June 10th, 2021, the Al-Aqsa flood. These are all what is described in Matthew 24. Right here, this is very likely, and I get this based on Luke 21. You guys already know that. We don't really need to go here. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. So this lines up with seal number 4. This seems to line up with seal number 5. And we know that seal number 5, it says, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren, who will be killed as they were, was completed. So there's an element of death involved here. And this is what seal number 5 is, or this is what the Great Tribulation is. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world. Until this time, no, nor shall ever be. And unless those days were shortened, well, turns out seal number 6, when you know when these are, between seal number 5 and seal number 6, is only 176 days, 6 months. So it would seem that could be why what is considered as a shortened period of time. For the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. And we learn from John 14:29 that he tells us these things beforehand so that when they happen, we will believe. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. So that's number 5. So that seems to be number 5. And here's further evidence, because right here after that is seal number 6. Let's read seal number 6. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. Now, if we come over here and read Matthew 24, this was after the great tribulation. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. It's not exactly the same. That's common in Scripture, to get additional information and to get clearer understanding by comparing notes between different prophets, different prophecies. The sun will become black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon will become like blood. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. And the stars of heaven fell to earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. And the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sky will recede as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. The earth was every island and every mountain and island was moved out of its place, and the kings of earth and the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the rocks and mountains, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne. Right? And they will see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and great glory. So hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, who is able to stand, and he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together the elect from the four winds and from one end of heaven to the other. So we are coming into this period of time. We're here. Right there. Days away. And the whole world can see it, you know. The hope of the world is that Trump is just showing by showing a strong force and a strong alliance with other countries, that it's going to result in peace. But we know how this story ends. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction. I believe that's what we're looking at, because this is the Great Tribulation. There's never been anything like it. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. All right, let's go back.
The world does actually pay attention to this, but it is very striking. The New York Times and other papers of record have just not even bothered to put this story on the front page in weeks. And that speaks to a more general apathy about this. I think this silence of so many people in the face of the massacre of the brave protesters in Iran is something that people will look back on with some shame, I think.
Yes, they're on the wrong side of history there, undoubtedly. Now, we saw in Davos, President Trump introduced the concept of the Board of Peace. It was not popular with a number of countries, including France and Britain. But do you see any merit in a Board of Peace, and would it coexist with the UN, or ultimately could it replace the UN?
The big problem, which Rita, with the UN, is that its so-called peacekeeping forces routinely fail to keep the peace. We saw that, of course, in the former Yugoslavia, particularly with the Dutch military who stood aside as the Srebrenica massacre, genocide happened. And we've seen it more recently in the utter failure of the UN peacekeeping force in the south of Lebanon to stop Hezbollah activity. So I certainly wouldn't trust the UN.
You know what I'm going to do? I just had this thought. We should schedule a seal opening party for February 17th, 2026. I think I'll go get one of those little digital telescopes that you can put on the sky and then remotely monitor what it's doing. We can put that up on the screen. Maybe we'll do like a Passover. We can read about Passover and about Jesus as the Passover lamb. I think I'll plan on doing that. We'll do something special on February 17th. I could be wrong. Nothing may happen. It may be uneventful. But it'll be interesting to watch that eclipse happen, so that in the event that if something does happen after that, you can say you watched that seal being opened. You watched the marking of that seal. Will be an interesting night.
And to oversee security in the post-war Gaza period, I think there are several things that are interesting about the Board of Peace. One is that President Trump has made himself the chairman, or has been asked to be the chairman, and that shows that he's going to be committed to the success of post-war Gaza, and that itself, I think, is a good sign. Secondly, there is concern among many people at the fact that Vladimir Putin's been invited to join. The Qataris, who of course are another state sponsor of terrorism in the region and extremism, have been asked to join. But the third thing is that it is very striking that a genuine international coalition is in the process of being put together. Now, what that looks like is still unclear. There is going to have to be very, very specific oversight to stop a security oversight to stop Hamas regrouping and being able to continue their persecution and murder of Palestinians in Gaza who stand up to them. And that's going to be probably the hardest bit of the whole puzzle to solve. But there are other countries, including the Emiratis and others, who I think will be able to help out in a meaningful way in the rebuilding process. And I think to get a regional coalition like this is a considerable diplomatic success. But of course, it's going to rely on what happens in the months and years ahead. I'm all for any new thinking on this because the status quo has been so appalling. And the UN status quo was basically that, Hamas would end up rearming, you rebuild Gaza, the same thing happens again in a few years' time. And that's just not, I think that shouldn't be acceptable to anyone. So any new thinking on it, I think, is to be welcomed.
I've been wanting to ask you about this shocking story from the Netherlands, where an idealistic project to house refugees and students together in a custom-built block became a nightmare of sexual assault and violence. The scheme placed 125 students alongside 125 refugees, with residents encouraged to form buddy partnerships to help migrants adjust to Dutch society. However, testimonies from former residents shared in an investigative documentary describe repeated sexual assaults, stalking and violent confrontations. And Douglas, this nightmare endured for years because everyone seemed to be so desperate for this pioneering project to work. And
well, what do you expect when you house them with a bunch of people whose one of their primary ideology is to spread their seed by any means possible, including rape?
It immediately for me brought back the grooming gang scandal in the UK. Supposedly well-intentioned people turning a blind eye to just some horrific behaviour.
Yeah, I mean, this is reminiscent of that, and sadly of many other such cases, Rita. I mean, it reminds me of cases I wrote about in The Strange Death of Europe 10 years ago now, where, for instance, there was a case I mentioned where an aid worker who worked with refugees and encouraged open borders was herself raped by some so-called refugees, migrants, and was encouraged by her colleagues not to report it and indeed to cover it up so that the narrative held. And this story from the Netherlands is very similar to that. And I think it's...
I want to move on to one more video.
One of the reasons that most people don't realize is,
one more video here with Raymond. And then we'll move on to the Mark of the Beast. I got a video on the Mark of the Beasts. Another one. There's a lot to cover on that. We're going to cover the Mark of the Beast from the Islamic perspective. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why it may not be the Mark of the Beasts. And then we're going to look at an actual manuscript to consider some things.
One of the reasons that most people don't realize is that the Islamic State, in fact, always issues these kind of calls telling them to do precisely that. It tells Muslims that if you're living in the West, terrorize them. Don't forget, you're a member of the Islamic State, and drive your trucks into them, drive your cars into them, go stab them, attack civilians, don't attack military. In other words, attack whatever's easy and soft targets. So one of the reasons that they're instructed to by these Islamic radicals. And the other is...
Where are these Islamic radicals?
Where are they?
Yeah.
Everywhere. You mean ISIS? Where are they? Well, I don't know. I mean, they issue a magazine that comes out every couple of weeks, and comes online in the dark net, and that's another term. When a lot of people get caught up. Okay, I understand. There's bad guys. It's ISIS. It's Al Qaeda. It's et cetera, et cetera. I don't get caught up in these kind of terms because the issue we're talking about is ideological and it transcends these finite organizations that come and go.
What about the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, they're known as the sort of granddaddy of all these organizations. Al Qaeda was, Ayman Zawahiri. I was telling you about Sayyid Qutb of Muslim Brotherhood. He's one of the earliest. Ayman Zawahiri was also who became the leader of Al Qaeda, was formerly the Muslim Brotherhood. And the difference that the Muslim Brotherhood and these groups have, so for example, in the writings of Ayman al-Zawahiri, which I translated from Arabic way back, almost 2 decades ago, he complained about the Muslim Brotherhood because they're too patient and they take a sort of incremental approach and they don't want to do jihad. which is in fact what makes them more dangerous. So he was more representative of the sort of ISIS thing, which is I want to do jihad now, I want to go kill the infidel. Whereas the Muslim Brotherhood, it's just a subversive kind of power. And I don't know if you know, but the FBI actually caught some documents back in 2009 that actually are from the Muslim Brotherhood, talking about how they're waging a civilizational jihad in America, trying to subvert, et cetera, and all these organizations that are branches from it, like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. So these are the groups that are engaged in what I told you, the jihad of the tongue, the jihad of the pen, the jihad of, the money. They're all working for the same purpose that ISIS is, but through legal measures, through propaganda and whatnot.
And I know that to someone who is...
So during this interview, this is a couple hour long interview. This is just a 10-minute section that we're monitoring right now about the ideology. During this interview, he'd mentioned how their ideology, their philosophy is to infiltrate into everything at every level, to influence and insurrect, basically. So there's a lot of reports of not only Islamic involvement in our systems. You wonder why things are so chaotic, but also sleeper cells, which is what worries me about the Great Tribulation is the Great Tribulation. So it's described as the worst thing that's ever happened on the planet. So is that an uprising conflict worse than it's ever been on the planet before, or is it something like nuclear? To be determined.
As in depth with all this stuff as you, these questions may sound kind of naive, but what do they want? What is that designed to achieve? What's the point of that?
That's actually a good question. So on the one hand, and this is actually really interesting because there's a school of thought. So I told you about ISIS issuing these directives. A lot of Muslims in the Muslim world tell you ISIS isn't an Islamic organization. It's actually working for Western elements to make people hate Muslims. And honestly, when I see, because you asked a good question, what is the point in telling Muslims go and stab people? What does that do? Does that somehow have a strategic purpose? All it does is make people hate Muslims, right? I mean, that's the logic. And I'm not telling you this is what I believe, but the civilizational jihad via the Muslim Brotherhood, that makes more sense to me than these organizations who just say, hey, they literally, the Islamic State once said, they issued a kind of one of their declarations at the peak of, I think it was the beginning of when the Israeli-Palestinian stuff a couple of years ago. And they told Muslims, don't attack Israel, because if you do, you're going to only empower Hamas, and they're not true Muslims, and the PLO, okay? And instead, we want you, and then they attacked Iran. It was in the context of they killed like 100 people in Kerman. And so they said, we're attacking Iran because Iran's evil, stupid Shias, Sunni Shia. And why would you want to fight Israel and help these other guys like the PLO who are not true Muslims? Instead, go to Europe and do that. Crash into them, decapitate them, and throw terror in their hearts. And everyone in the Arab world said, see, this is not real ISIS. But on the other hand, what they are teaching is in the Quran. So Quran 9:5, famously, it's known as a sword verse. And it tells Muslims, it's actually, remember I was telling about Jefferson talking with an ambassador? He basically paraphrased it. That verse says, when, the forbidden months are past, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, the pagans. Lay in wait for them, ambush them, terrorize them, okay?
So what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, this is not strategic, this is doctrinal.
Yeah, from the Islamic State, that's what I would argue. And this is why a lot of other Muslim groups who have the same goal, they'd like to see Islamic hegemony around the world, don't take that route. Because to them, even Al-Qaeda, for example, which is ISIS, when I translated the writing, so what they said to the West was, we're doing this because you attacked us. We're doing this because you support Israel. We're doing this because you didn't sign the Kyoto Protocol. It was always a grievance. Seriously, it was a grievance after grievance. And it had nothing to do with doctrine. Then the writings I came across, this is my first book, The Al-Qaeda Reader, which came out in 2007. And the reason it was a kind of a big deal at the time, I was working at the Library of Congress, and I came all across these Arabic writings by Osama bin Laden and Ayman Zawahiri. And they said, now they sounded like ISIS. And it was where we hate them, not because of what they do. It's because they're infidels, and we have to hate the infidels, and we have to fight them, and we have to do jihad. Okay. So even Al-Qaeda was smart enough to, play the double game and say, hey, we're only doing this to you because you hit us first. But ISIS is so, to me, I always say they're refreshingly honest, but in a way that doesn't really help the cause, as a lot of Muslims point out, because what you're doing is you're sort of exposing us. And yeah, when you go and you stab toddlers in the UK or whatever, what is that? How's that helping from a strategic point? So it's a good question. If Islam can be changed, okay, and immediately I'm struck with a quote from the Encyclopedia of Islam, which was written by a jurist, and he said, Islam needs to be completely made over for the doctrine of jihad, which it defined as what I defined, which is unprovoked warfare to conquer the world. Okay, he said it had to be remade over. Can that be done? I suppose, but it would not. It would no longer really be Islam. And I think, I mean, if you look around at certain versions of Christianity, I mean, that's the case. That's not historic Christianity. So I suppose that can be done. The examples you gave of these Central Asian countries, it's very interesting because, they are nominal Muslims, but like you said, they're the first ones who clamp down on that stuff because they will be the first victims. It's even the Muslim Brotherhood is outlawed in Egypt, where it was born.
Right.
But at the same time, Sisi and his government pays a lot of lip service and is engaged in Islamizing Egypt. And he will ally with the Salafis, who are actually more ideologically draconian than Muslim Brotherhood. So there's a lot of kind of like shifting back and forth with how this works. But, the bottom line is Islam is what Islam is, okay? And unlike other religions, it's very black and white. The whole concept, the problem with Western people is they project their own religion kind of, and then they're convinced that, for example, Christianity is, separation of secular and spiritual, Caesar and the coin and whatnot, but that's not Islam. Islam is not it's not about the condition of your heart and the relationship you have with God. It's actually all about the law. It's legalistic. And in fact, everything in Islam is, there's 5, either it's forbidden, you can't do, it's disliked, you shouldn't do, but you can technically, it's neutral, you can or don't have to do, it's recommended, you should do, but you don't have to, or it's obligatory. Everything in life. So Islam really permeates. So can it change? Can they re-articulate it? I suppose, but you're always going to have the hardliners who say, hey, that's not what our book says. That's not what the Quran says. That's not what Muhammad said in the Hadith. I think it would actually be easier to just snuff it out altogether from Muslims themselves. In other words, I always find the apostate more honest with himself or herself than the moderate Muslim. And because the apostate is kind of like, look, I'm not going to kid myself. It is what it is, and I don't want to be like that. Whereas the moderate, they engage in all these sort of intellectual gymnastics in their head to get by. I mean, if Muhammad himself in a canonical hadith says, whoever, the apostate, kill him. Okay, or in the Quran itself, you are allowed to. It's permissible for a man to have sex slaves, infidel female sex slaves, as many as your right hand possess. Okay, and these sorts of things. If I'm a Muslim and I don't want to accept that, for example, what do you do with those verses? And I often watch in Arabic these clerics, and that's what they say. Remember, I was telling you about the one guy who was basically saying, yeah, if you're married to a Christian, you can, but you have to hate her. And lo and behold, a lot of the people sitting there were kind of questioning, like, are you serious? And he finally gets frustrated and he goes, well, it's written, what do you do with the verses that I just quoted, including, you got to hate and Abraham and whatnot. So the crux of the matter is the religion itself, which is so easily identified and clear cut, teaches what we call radical things. Okay. They're only radical from our perspective. Subjective perspective. They're not radical from a Muslim point of view.
Well, but that's exactly the point I'm putting to you, which is it clearly is radical from the perspective of the rulers of the UAE, from the rulers of Saudi Arabia.
Right. It's radical because it's radical to them because they can suffer from it because they're not seen as legitimate Muslim rulers.
Right.
And at the same time, they have to pay lip service to Islam. So they're not, in other words, a lot of these rulers are just not Muslim at heart, obviously, but they govern Muslims. So they want to create the most, on the one hand, they want to be legitimate and show their legitimacy as, hey, I can be your ruler. And which means they have to kind of let the pot kind of steam come out a little bit so the Muslims can feel this is actual Islam. And on the other hand, they've got to kind of clamp down on certain teachings. So that's why a lot of these rulers are often just, denounced as, puppets of the West and not true Muslims, including the ones in Saudi Arabia who are actually nominal Wahhabis, which is as radical as you can get. And in fact, they do disseminate and play a huge role in sort of disseminating jihadist literature. And they're still hated and seen as pawns of the West.
All right. So Anne Cluley asks, Jesus, do you really believe he existed? Are you asking if we believe that Jesus existed? Absolutely. Definitely believe that Jesus existed. And let me give you an explanation you might not have heard at church. So in Deuteronomy 19, Deuteronomy. This is the Old Testament. 19, I think it's 15. The law concerning witnesses. Oh, here, let me share my screen. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter is established. If a false witness rises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days, and the judges shall make careful inquiry, and indeed, if the witness is false, who has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter they shall not commit such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity. Life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. So why do I read this about witnesses? Because there's an important principle here that is applicable to knowing if a matter is true. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. So this is a universal principle, and you can understand how it would work. If Sally, say Jimmy stole a cookie from the cookie jar, and it was only Sally who saw Jimmy do it, well, it would be Sally's word against Jimmy's word on whether Jimmy stole a cookie from the cookie jar. But if Sally and, Bruce both saw Jimmy steal a cookie from the cookie jar, then Sally and Bruce have a stronger witness, and it's more likely that what they're saying is true. And even if there's a third one, that is one of the strongest witnesses. That is that the matter is established. Now, we have these gospels called the Synoptic Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all testify about Jesus being a real man, being somebody who was alive, and they have parallel records. They tell similar stories from different perspectives about his life. That is 3 witnesses that Jesus lived. Now, it would be understandable if you were to say, okay, well, how do I trust the Bible? How do I even know that's true? And somebody didn't just write, 3 manuscripts from different people and corroborate. Good question. In Matthew 14:29, this is one of the strongest witnesses. Is it Matthew? No, it's John. Is it John? Yeah. And now, so this is Jesus. Red letters mean Jesus speaking. And now I have told you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe. I will no longer talk with you much. So Jesus says, there's a lot of things that he says about the future. And right here, he tells you why he tells you those things about the future. And now I have told you before it comes to pass, that when it does come to pass, you may believe, right? So in Matthew 24, he kind of he repeats this. Matthew 24. And then we just looked at this. See, I have told you beforehand. So Jesus has given us a ton of information about, because he didn't know, I don't think he knew when it was going to be. He didn't know if it was going to be 10 years or 100 years. I can't imagine he was thinking 1,000 or 2,000 years into the future. But he gave us a lot of information of what to look for before it happened. And then enter the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 1, zoop, zoop, zoop. Revelation 1:1. The revelation of Jesus Christ. So this book is attributed to him, which God gave to him to show his servants. So the revelation contained in this book of Jesus Christ, God gave to him. So the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show his servants things which must shortly take place. And he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. Again, here's a witness who bore witness to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, to all things that he saw. Blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of this prophecy. So there's a lot of witnesses, and you would be, even if you dismissed the witness of the Gospels, that people went to their grave testifying to his life. And there was a lot of people that went to their grave testifying about Jesus. You've got a book here in Revelation about things that would happen in future events. And now you start here. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. You start there. That's the anchor point. Well, wouldn't you know it, that sign happened. 9/23/2017. And ever since this sign, a lot of things have been happening that were written about in the book of Revelation. Now, if you're not specifically looking for these things, you're going to miss them. People have read the book of Revelation for almost 2,000 years. It's just under 2,000 years. It's like 1,900 years. 1,930 years-ish. There's been a lot of interpretations about what it would mean. Well, once that sign happened, once there's a sign in that book written that it just so only happens one time. And we've looked at these on the channel before. Let's see, I don't have I have a slideshow with all of the instances going back like 6,000 years. So we've gone backwards 6,000 years looking for that sign to happen. It just doesn't happen. There are versions of it, but they're all missing elements. Every single element of that sign from Revelation 12, the only time that it happens is on September 23rd, 2017. So that is attributed to Jesus. Remember how the book of Revelation started? The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show his disciples. Why did he show us these things? So that when they begin to happen, you will believe. So, and then we've got like 60 or 70 different data points of things that have happened since the Revelation 12 sign. So much so that based on the pattern of the things that have happened, that's how we're able to estimate that something is going to happen on February 17th. Because the eclipses that marked out these events, and they were eclipses. So there was so this is Revelation 4. Revelation 4 describes a key on how to understand the events in the book. And then basically it points to eclipses. There was an eclipse here. This was the start of the pandemic. There was an eclipse here. This is when Joe Biden was declared the winner of the election. I kid you not, there was an eclipse on that day. And this was also the same day they gave the first vaccine, the great sword that was used as a weapon on the entire earth. There was an eclipse on this day when the United States and the United Kingdom yoked themselves together like two beasts. There's Joe Biden and Boris Johnson. These two idiots are the ones who signed the New Atlantic Charter. Then there was, that's a yoke. Then there was the Al-Aqsa flood. There was an eclipse on October 14th, 2023, when Israel responded to Hamas with Operation Iron Sword. These events happened on days of eclipses, and they just so happened to form a pattern. If you notice, there's day counts between each one of these eclipses. Well, it just so happens at the middle point here, they start to reverse. There's a reverse order of those eclipses, which is literally just, it's like little arrows pointing to these eclipses saying, pay attention to this day, something important is going to happen. Pay attention to this day, something important is going to happen. Pay attention to this day. Well, something important is going to happen. The start of something important is going to happen. And according to our research here, it seems as though this is the Great Tribulation that Jesus talked about. So, do I believe that Jesus existed? Yes. Absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind. I believe not only did he exist, but that he's alive and he's coming. We've been paying attention to 3i Atlas because that interstellar object doesn't exhibit any of the typical signs of a meteor. And in fact, I think there are up to 20 different anomalies that are different from other interstellar objects. And the fact that it's just hanging out by Jupiter, which is associated with Yeshua, and in fact, Jupiter was in retrograde here in Virgo for 9 months. The fact that 3i Atlas is just hanging out by Jupiter is suspicious, to say the least. The fact that that they're looking at it as potential technology. You know why Jesus had to leave? We didn't talk about this very much. I can't remember where it is in the scripture, but it says that he had to go receive his kingdom. He left because he had to go be crowned king. That's what he's been doing. And he said that he was going to go and prepare a place for us and then come again to retrieve us. Well, that day is fast approaching. It looks like it could be this year. I hate to get my hopes up because I've done it so many times before, and it's painful when the days come and pass, they come and go, and he doesn't return. I tell you, if something happens on February 17th, if there is an Islamic uprising, that's going to be absolute confirmation that Yeshua is coming soon, at least in my mind. If nothing happens on this day and Trump happens to make peace on earth, I'm going to be doing some very serious recalculations on our dates. But if something does happen on February 17th, if there is, the spark that lights the flame that, starts the Great Tribulation, if there's another Al-Aqsa flood type of an event, or if there's, massive fighting that takes place, or if for when they say peace and safety happens on that day, then sudden destruction, you'll know. Every word that he spoke is true, and that he's coming back to get those whose names are written in his book. So you want to be written in the Lamb's book of life, because you don't want to go through the wrath. That's probably why there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth, is people are, probably going to see me talking about this in this video and laughing at me, calling me an idiot. What a fool I am. No one knows the day or hour, those kind of things. And then, if their name's not written in the Lamb's book of life and he comes and they're left behind, well, there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth, because what follows is God's wrath. You got the North and South Pole are going to change their position. That's why every mountain and island is going to be moved out of its place. It's why the heavens roll up like a scroll, because all the stars are going to be moved out of their place. Yeah, you can imagine the kind of damage that's going to cause on the earth. And then let's see, what's the time? So then a year after the rotation of the earth, I imagine that's probably the period of time that so you can imagine this. Everybody whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life, imagine Jesus comes and retrieves them, because that's the first harvest, right? He retrieves those who are written in his book, removed from the earth. That's gonna, who that's gonna leave behind? All the Islamists, all the Muslims, the Muslims whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life, will be left behind. So, what kind of a kingdom is going to be here? Probably Islamic. It's what it's shaping up to be like. Here, you want to see what you want to see what one of the potential candidates for the mark of the beast is? Let's listen to this.
Is the Muslim identity of the Antichrist encoded in ancient manuscripts of the New Testament? Let's find out. Revelation 13:18 says, "This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666." Now, you can't really see anything from the English. There's no connection apparently there between 666 and anything Islamic. So what is this particular code idea that wants to identify 666, the identity of the beast, the name of the beast, with a Muslim? Well, if we look at a particular New Testament manuscript, a very old one, 5th century, this is Vaticanus, and
so I want to show you this. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually look at Vaticanus. I'll put the links in the description. Here you go. Oops. So you go to digi.vatlib, vatlib.it, and then you find vat.gr, which is Greek, and then 1209. That's the manuscript where this is found. And then in the upper, geez, that zooms in fast. Here, we may need to use this little dial here. Right up here in the upper corner, you can look for that little sword. Right there. There's a little sword. And this is where he's looking at. So this right here is, in the Greek, it looks like chi kashi stigma. There you go. That's what it looks like. That is one of the actual manuscripts that has been high resolution photocopied and is available on the Vatican's website. Right there. So chi kashi stigma. Let's go back here.
this portion is from Revelation 13, and specifically it is Revelation 13:18. If you look down at the third line and the third word moving left to right, there is a word there with 3 letters and a line over it. That particular word is actually the number 666 written in Greek hand in the manuscript Vaticanus. You say, well, big deal. What is it about this number that matters for anything? Well, look at it closely. You've got the first letter looks like an X. The second letter really isn't anything that we would use, this sort of vertical squiggle. And the third letter kind of looks like an S with a dot next to it. The dot is actually a scribal mark. If we put, however, below that word, this Arabic, this is the word for Allah. You'll notice that most of this word, the second consonant, reading right to left in Arabic, sort of looks like the middle consonant, the middle letter of 666 in this Greek hand. The only difference really is the way they are turned. Now, if I add to the Arabic a little bit more, a few Arabic letters, and then at the end, the familiar crossed swords of Islam, and then I turn that middle consonant on its side, you can see pretty clearly that we've got a situation where the 3 letters in Vaticanus sort of look like this Arabic with the crossed sword. The Arabic here means Bismillah, which means in the name of Allah. So there are many out there on the internet who look at the writing in Vaticanus and this Arabic phrase with the familiar swords of Islam and say, look, 666 in this Greek manuscript looks an awful like Bismillah, in the name of Allah. And so therefore we should connect the number of the beast with an Islamic terrorist. There are other less obvious problems with this visual correlation. For instance, the issue of paleography, which is...
So now he's going to get into reasons why it may not be the mark of the beasts. So this particular interpretation is based on the Vatican's Greek manuscript, which is a newer manuscript. He's going to talk about the older ones.
The study of handwriting. The letter style in the book of Revelation, specifically the portion we read in Vaticanus, is something scholars call the minuscule script, minuscule handwriting. This is not the handwriting style of all first century Greek New Testament manuscripts that are currently known. That letter style is called uncial, and it is written in all capital letters in Greek. Now, Vaticanus is a little bit unusual because it has both handwriting styles in the manuscript, which tells us that two different scribes produced it at different times. Let
me see if I can show you what he's talking about. So if you come back... Oops. So this is the unseal. It's really obvious when you see the capitals. See? This is what he's talking about with the capitals and how there's two different styles. These are all caps. Right there.
After Hebrews 9:13, Vaticanus is written in the much later minuscule hand. Before that, we have the uncial script that all of the earliest manuscripts are written in. To illustrate it,
I may have gotten
here
those
in this
backwards.
image, we have uncial script. You can see that it is quite visually different than the earlier example in Vaticanus that we saw. We have block letters, capital letters, again, all running into each other. We don't have letter and word separations or scribal marks like we do with minuscule style. It's quite different. Now, the point of all this is not just a paleography lesson. The point is that the original text of the book of Revelation would not have been in the handwriting style that looks like Arabic.
All right. So my opinion on that... Let me see if I've got another website here. So my opinion on that is it is a valid argument for one possibility that it may not be the Bismillah, the in the name of Allah. You know, if it was originally written in the all capital version, the all capital version doesn't look like the Bismillah. However, I'm a big fan that God knows everything, and that he would have known that that would have been translated into something that looked like the Bismillah, so that it was available for our consideration during this time. So I still hold it as a potential candidate. Now, there's a handful of interpretations for 666. There are those who will insist it's Nero. There are those who will insist it's King Charles, because King Charles or Prince Charles of Wales calculates to 666. There are those who believe it represents the Trinity, because 666 is the number of man, and you've got 3 6s, which represent 3 crosses, which is a pictograph of, Christ being crucified. When you actually study the synoptic gospels, you'll find out there's actually 4 who were crucified with Jesus, 2 malefactors and 2 thieves. Thieves and malefactors are different. Thieves are, somebody who steals. Malefactors are somebody who does something malicious, like killing. So there were 4 crucified with Jesus. So there are some, and I was trying to find the website. There's a book written by Gerald Fleury called The Key of David, where he interprets it to be the key kashi stigma which is the Greek, and even in the capitals, can be translated as Christ's cross mark. The chi is a abbreviation for Christ, CHI. Kashi is an abbreviation for cross, and then stigma means either hole, puncture, or mark, like a tattoo. So one translation is tattoo of Christ's cross. So there are various interpretations of what 666 could mean. So I'm pointing these all out for our consideration because they're like puzzle pieces. Based on what we're seeing right now, if there is going to be an Islamic uprising, and if that is involved in the Great Tribulation, because as we saw yesterday, the philosophy, the doctrine, the belief of Islam is to crush to dust and dominate entirely. And there is a massive amount of Islamic imagery in the book of Revelation. Just look at the color of the first 4 horses of the apocalypse. The first one was white, second one was red, third one is black, fourth one is green. Those are the colors of the Islamic of the Islamic nations. All the flags have variations of those colors. So I'm inclined to lean towards the Bismillah. It seems to make sense. And, if the Great Tribulation, seal number 5, is waiting for those who will be killed as they were, is the final waiting, is if that's what's happening, then after that, you have the rise of the kingdom from the earth. Well, if the only people left on earth are those who weren't written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and the Muslims who weren't written in the Lamb's Book of Life, it would make sense that's the kingdom that would be left on earth. And if it's going to enforce a mark on those who don't follow Islam, it would make sense that it is in the name of Allah. See what I mean? All right, well, that's all I got to share with you guys for tonight. What should we cover for tomorrow? This is tomorrow is Friday. Yeah, I think tomorrow's Friday, or is today Friday? Tomorrow's Friday. So what should we cover for tomorrow? This week I was just focusing on learning about Islam. What else do we need to learn about Islam? I may do smaller segments on bruising the head of the serpent, and I want to start doing the addressing the house of Israel again, to where we listen to both Jew and Christian teachers and react to their videos. But if there's anything you want me to cover tomorrow, let me know. If there's anything specific, you want me to cover anything else on the mark of the beasts, any other, if you have any other videos or interpretations you want me to cover or consider, if there's anything regarding Islam and Muslims that you want me to cover and consider, there's no shortage of material. But tomorrow will probably be the last day that we focus entirely on it. We'll get back into covering, both bruising the head of the serpent and addressing the house of Israel for next week. So anybody got any other questions? Anything else you guys want to talk about before we go? See if I can fix that bruising the head of a serpent while you guys think about it.
I come in my own name. A shadow falls, a world aflame. I rise, I rule, I stake my claim. A serpent's coil, a deadly game. I build my throne, I seek my fame. I wear the crown, you bend the knee.
I don't know what's wrong with that video. It plays outside of my studio. Maybe it's just the studio is having a hard time playing it. So that song, I Come in My Own Name, is based on John 5:43, where Jesus says, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. One will come after me who comes in his own name, him you will receive. That's the basis of that song, I Come in My Own Name, is it's representative of the one that, the one that comes after Jesus. Some might call him the Antichrist, which I argue is a religion that is contrary to Yeshua, the religion that teaches that Jesus came in his own name, which is false. Jesus did not come in his own name. He came in his Father's name. We should look at Shabbat. Good idea. Good idea. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. Love having you guys here. This is the highlight of my day every day that we're here. I love looking for these things and just spending time in the Word and, looking for little gems. And we continually find little gems almost daily as we continue to do this. We've discovered so many things that it just boggles my mind, and I'm thankful to have you guys here with me on this journey. It's amazing. I really appreciate Fury bringing it up to start learning about Islam. It's definitely something that I lack. I barely even have scratched the surface. I wouldn't even consider myself even barely beginning to scratch the surface of understanding, Islam and Muslims. So we'll continue in some degree to learn about this and see where it fits. Maybe we can look at maybe we can go through and mark out the stuff that's clearly Islamic by nature, and catalog those things of what to look for, what the things that are pointing to Islam. All right. Well, if you like this content, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up on the video. It really does help the video. If you like watching this without commercials, make sure you catch the live video, which is Monday through Friday at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time and 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. I don't do any monetization during that time frame, and unfortunately, YouTube doesn't really push out the live. They used to. It used to be that they would prioritize lives, but they don't anymore. But I'm not a fan of commercials. I don't like turning on the commercials. However, I have started cutting out segments every day out of the live, and then we do turn on monetization in those. And the reason is because YouTube will push them out like crazy. And that's how we bring new people to the channel. It's an unfortunate reality of YouTube. If you really want them to do you any favors, you really need to turn on that monetization. So we don't really do it because we don't need the money here. God is taking care of me and my family. But it is, I know it's annoying. If you have the YouTube Premium, you don't even notice the commercials. YouTube Premium's worth paying for if you spend a lot of time watching YouTube. Plus you get YouTube Music included in it and some other benefits as well. Well worth the money if you want to pay for YouTube Premium. But if you don't, then I apologize in advance for all the commercials. That's on YouTube, not me. I would prefer to have them turned off. But it does bring people to the channel. And right now, especially with the Addressing the House of Israel segment, I think that's really important. Because there are people who don't even believe Jesus was real. And there are people who might believe that Jesus was real, but they don't believe that he was the Son of God. If they do believe that he's the Son of God, there are people who don't understand why he's the Son of God. And we've explained that on this channel before, how it is that he's the Son of God, why it's so important to actually understand that and to understand who he is and what he did. Adam was the Son of God, right? Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. And then Eve, she wasn't formed from the dust of the ground. She was formed from Adam's side, is what's written in the text. It doesn't actually say rib bone. Did you know that in the Hebrew it's from his side? So I speculate that he was formed from the stem cells in Adam's ribs, because stem cells can be used to build an entire body. Stem cells can become any other cell in the body. And the reason why I think that is important is there's a riddle in the scripture on how is Jesus both the root and offspring of David. In other words, how is he the genetic source of David as well as the offspring of David? How can those two things be true? And one reasonable explanation is that when Mary said, "Be it unto me according to your word," God used the same process or similar process that he used to form Eve. With Mary, he caused a deep sleep on her and took one of those stem cells, or a bunch, maybe millions of them, and formed seed. Probably one. I would imagine probably one. Took the stem cell and converted that into seed, which would fulfill Genesis 3:15, where God promised that the seed of the woman would bruise the head of the serpents. Because quite literally, that is possible. And believe it or not, we've proved it with science. There's a process called game to Genesis. You can Google that. It's like video game, GAMETO, Genesis, game to Genesis. They've done experiments where they've taken stem cells and turned them into seed and then reimplanted those seed into the female mice. They've done it with mice. They haven't done it with humans that anybody's reported. So that would make Jesus? That would make him the only begotten Son of God, because Adam wasn't begotten. Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. Eve was formed from Adam. And if Jesus was through the process of game to Genesis, that would make, because he doesn't have a father, that would make God his father, just like Adam, God was Adam's father. That would make God Jesus's father as well. However, it would also mean that the same genetics that formed the bloodline for David, Jesus had them. He came from the same bloodline. However, he wouldn't have inherited the Y chromosome, which I'm not going to go into details on this one. The Y chromosome, if you go look it up, it's inherited from father to son. And you and I, those who are from Adam's bloodline, we've all inherited Adam's Y chromosome. Well, it turns out Jesus did not inherit Adam's Y chromosome. He had a brand new one. Would have had a brand new one if he was the process of game to Genesis. It's making him a lamb without blemish. He was not from the same cursed bloodline, but because he was the son of Mary, that makes him a progeny of David, therefore making him the root and offspring of David, and answering that riddle and fulfilling the prophecy of Genesis 3:15, making Jesus the Son of God, the Lamb without blemish, who God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And because he didn't have that Y chromosome, he was not subject to the curse that Adam was, that God told him, "In the day you eat thereof, thou shalt surely die." Well, he died. But because Jesus wasn't subject to that same curse, death could not hold him. And thus God raised him from the dead. And being raised from the dead, he inherited the kingdom and dominion of the earth. And that's why he had to leave. He had to go receive that kingdom. And I guess it means that either it took 2,000 years, or it's 2,000 years away, or he's been busy building a place for us, preparing a place for us, because he did promise that he would return. And all signs are pointing to he's going to return soon. So there you go. Thank you so much for joining me. See you guys again tomorrow. God bless you.